All right, well, thank you so much for joining the Rebirth Sessions. And if you're brand new here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Rebirth Sessions. So this Rebirth Sessions, yeah, come on in. The Rebirth Sessions are in fact gatherings. You can start anytime because it's continuing. And you can do it as intense as you want, intensively as you want. And that is once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And this is with some preparation most of the time. So you prepare something because they're like assignments. And that works just great because it brings you back continuously by your own experience. And that's what the Rebirth Sessions are about. This is not about concepts, about nice ideas, not about anything else but your own experience. Like, okay, you've heard it all. You have seen it all. You've heard it all. Now what is next? How am I supposed to work with this? What is supposed to happen in my transformational process? Or how am I applying any of these ideas while I'm actually in the middle of something that's pretty intense? Or who knows what the occasion is. So this is where the Rebirth Sessions are coming up for, and which is, like I said, every month you can step in anew. And this is really great. So now you can pick, okay, I'm going to commit myself to once a week or twice or 3 times, whatever you feel like. That's perfectly all right. But the commitment is really great because then actually something is really happening, because you have to, say you're open to receive and to give to it every week. Now that's really something, I can tell you that. And so that's why I'm giving a little introduction. Since now the new month has started, so welcome to May. These are the Rebirth Sessions in May. And so the Rebirth Sessions are a bit different kind of meetings. And one of the beautiful things is that it doesn't really matter whether you do A Course in Miracles, whether you do Joel Goldsmith, whether you who knows what do. It is like, no, this is about the application of what maybe you are, say, a Sri Aurobindo follower, who knows what, or in Yogananda, or who knows what, it doesn't matter. This is all about the implementation of your spiritual teaching, like however that looks and whatever that's supposed to mean. But here it comes down to, okay, so that's great, but how do you proceed from here? What is going on? What do you think there's something to achieve? Or what is your role in the whole story? Or can you step back out of it and see something happen? Or who knows what? So this is a continuing theme in the Rebirth Sessions. So, and what is rebirth? Well, that's a good question. Rebirth, I'm not going to define it. It is in fact inevitable as the start of your spiritual awakening, you could say. Like you've heard 1,000 beautiful concepts. You read 10,000 books. You listened to at least 1 million minutes of videos and tapes. But that doesn't mean anything. What actually means something is that you allowed that for just a second to be true and to let that be whole. Well, that moment to let it be whole and wanting that as the only thing in that moment is what we call rebirth. And that's most of the time experienced as a moment of death, as a moment of really deep something shifts. Like it will not be unnoticed. It either happened or did not happen. But it's in fact the only place where something real is happening. So that's why there's so much emphasis on the Rebirth Sessions, like on the idea of rebirth. I'll bring it back up all the time because it's like, okay, that's great, but You know, it's like this is not theorizing, it's not spiritualizing, it's not psychoanalysis. No, not at all. This is just about getting to the point of a rebirth. So that's in a nutshell what the rebirth sessions are. So if you commit yourself to staying with this for, say, for a month, because you can step in any month, do it now. Decide to do it now. Come back for 4 times or 5 times in May, or maybe the double amount, 8 times, or maybe 12 times. It's a real beautiful, intensive for yourself to commit yourself to this. Like what we invite you to is coming to the individual expression of it, also in creative expression, or in poetry, or in discovery, or in who knows how that's going to be expressed through you, because it has everything to do with your individual expression of you stepping aside, you could say, stepping aside sufficiently in order to let what is speak through you in whatever form, it doesn't matter. So it's always appropriate in that sense. Yeah, okay, so offering you that freedom continuously, in fact, in these meetings, it's a great way to meet each other, to discover more together, and to see that when 2 or more are gathered, there's really something happening. There's a presence and there's a possibility of recognition in the true sense of speaking. So, and in fact, that is the basis of the communication that is taking place here. You can feel that. You can feel the instantaneousness of the communication. And so, yeah, that's great. All right, so now the next step. We came up, this idea came to me to share, and this is saviorship. And that's a big word, because it's like it has a history of an icon, an idol, you could say, of your savior. Like there could only be one person. And it's like, no, not exactly. But you might have a history of believing that. That, of course, has changed, because now letting it be all open and new, who knows what that is. So this meeting is really set on the idea of who is my savior, without mentioning a name necessarily. I mean, it has nothing to do with the name. No, it's, you could say, exploring the idea, discovering what it actually is, and seeing that some of the words that are given to us are actually helpful to say, discover, to allow the idea to speak to you and be put into a vision, because that's in fact the only thing that can be shared. It's like vision can be shared, because it gives you a new insight of, you would never believe that it would be like that, but now you hear it, you have a recognition with it. And so I want to say, start with a few expressions that don't define the savior, but give you an invitation to look at it in a different way. Now, there are some more classical ways of looking at that, which is also really beautiful. I'm sharing that from Joel Goldsmith. There's also like Jesus expressing himself as being seen as the savior. He knows what he's talking about, you could say, but at the same time, he's inviting you to do something. Now, this I want to share, not as an teaching as much as it's more like a sharing of vision. So I want to start with that. So the title of this meeting is "The One Who Stands Beside You." Now that sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Okay, so here's one of the visions, in fact, that is being shared. This brother who stands beside you still seems to be a stranger. You do not know him, and your interpretation of him is very fearful. And you attack him still to keep what seems to be yourself unharmed. Yet in his hands is your salvation. You see his madness, which you hate because you share in it, and all the pity and forgiveness that would heal it gives way to fear. Brothers, you need forgiveness of each other, for you will share in madness or in heaven together, and you will raise your eyes in faith together, or not at all. Now, this is what I want to bring into the practicality of every day. So it's like, who's your savior? Well, let's start with your brother. Who's your brother? Well, anyone who you meet, right? It's not like some are brothers and some are not brothers. Some are not like... No, they're all brothers. Anyone you meet is your brother, as Jesus defines it in the Course in Miracles. It's like, they're all your brothers. We're all brothers. Like in a recognition of our shared sonship, we're all brothers. It is without gender in that sense. It doesn't have anything to do with gender. So, the one that stands next to you, the one that is looking at you, the one that is sitting next to you in public transportation, or the one that needs help suddenly, the one that you've never met before and thought of as a stranger, the one that, and on and on and on. So the practicality is the way that you see this one, you could say, determines whether you recognize him as your brother and also as your savior. That's up to you. Now this is, let's say, very practical. So we're going to split up. And I'm going to open up some rooms, and you can choose a room. Okay, thank you so much for joining in whatever happened in the rooms. That's great. Thank you so much for your participation. And if you want to share something about it, that's great. We can do that later. But for now, we're just continuing. And so checking it. And so we're in this idea, or in the... We don't know what a savior is, in fact. So that's the point where we're at. We don't know what a savior is, but we get an idea here. We're getting an idea. Now, like I said, we have also an historical way of, classical way of looking at it, which is given by Joel Goldsmith. I love to share a little bit about that, because what he does is in that sense a bit different than what we just heard and just practiced, you could say. It is more like the idea of, well, if there was a savior called Jesus on this earth, then this earth would have a savior for 3 years or something. It's like, that's very short. And that cannot be it also. That's impossible. That cannot be it. So there was a savior even before Abraham. I am was already. Before Abraham was, I am was already. So it's like, so there has been a savior, and he has been there. He has always been present. Now, what is this savior? Without mentioning a name, what is that savior? So this is what Joel describes, and I'll refer to it within a visual. If the historical sense of the Bible is literally true, all of the years prior to the advent of Jesus, during the time when the Messiah was promised, would have been years of absolute darkness, without a savior of any kind. Then we find the record of the man Jesus, and he was recorded as the promised Messiah. If this record is really true, that the coming of the Messiah or Savior is the coming of a man to earth, then there has been no Savior on the earth since 33 AD. In other words, the whole history of the world, according to the literal interpretation of the Bible, shows only 3 years during which God had a Savior on earth. If we now accept the later revelation of the Christ, that we are the sons of God and before Abraham was I am, then we find that there has always been a Savior in the world. Therefore, these promises can have no bearing on the facts that these statements must have some other vital significance. Now, that's wonderful. The literal promise of the Old Testament is that there will be a Messiah or a Savior, and when this is literally taken, the Gospel of the New Testament presents the coming of a man in fulfillment of an old prophecy. This Savior is on earth for a few brief years and leaves again the world with a promise of a future Savior, the second coming. Spiritually interpreted, the record of the New Testament of the birth of the Christ is the birth in our individual consciousness, wherever and whenever it occurs. We must live in the consciousness that we as individuals, and I always love to use the I word, because we don't really exist, it's individual expression of consciousness. I must live in the consciousness that I, as an individual, am the light of the world. And because I do not come down from that point, that high estate, those not yet awakened to their true identity, through their contact with us, that they too are the light of the world. See, they are too the light of the world. The consciousness of the individual is the Savior. And when we arrive at that understanding, we realize that there is no need for recognition or reward. Now, I really love that latter part, the last part of it I really love. I'm happy that it's here, because it is like getting rid, in fact, of all the ideas of a Savior that's going to save the world. It becomes closer to you, like total individual responsibility in that sense. Is like, well, the world you perceive has in fact one Savior. Who is that? That's me. Is there a me and some other Savior? No. No, that puts it directly in my lap. Like if this world that I'm perceiving, between quotes, would have a Savior, it would be me, because I'm literally dreaming this whole setup. Like it's my dream. So there cannot be another Savior. If I change my mind about who I am, who I think I am, coming in the recognition and realization of who I am, this world that I perceive will be saved, because it is my individual gift to it. I recognize the truth of who I am within me, and now I see that, I give that to this world. I give that to all places where I find myself, allowing moments to be perfect, encounters to be perfect, my love to be perfect. Like this is continuously the attempt of the Savior, you could say, the attempt to, in fact, extend perfect love with no judgment, total forgiveness, total acceptance, total tolerance, total innocence, total so that brings it back to me. That brings it back to my individual expression. Where is that happening? In my consciousness. Does this world need to be saved? In my consciousness, yes. Is there a world? No. The I am has overcome the world. Do I still need to save this world? Well, I save it by recognizing the truth in every step I take in this world. If I make anything real as a lack, limitation, or anything like that, I'm not fulfilling my function, and increase fear in myself and futility, experiences of futility or depression, all kinds of those things, because I'm actually doing something to prolongate the suffering in this dream that I created. So that is the setup of this. It's like, as long as I am in a giving extension and coming back to myself all the time, realizing, oh yeah, here's that happening. Wow, okay, I can shine this light wherever I am. I can recognize that light in everyone I meet, even though it appears to be a stranger, it appears to be a sick person, or it appears to be whoever. No, he or she is actually saving me, giving me a chance at least to connect, to see this all happening in a whole new light. That by seeing that, and by receiving that, that's probably a really good word, by receiving that from my brother, and there's no doing on my part on this, except stepping back and letting my ideas go. It's like, in order for me to realize that it's given me, if I accept that, then I'm setting everyone free, because I recognize it in myself. So that's really like the practice. So that's so lovely. But see, I express it now still with words or concepts, but actually I'm giving that to you right here. So you can receive that, because I do recognize that in you. And that's the loveliness of this. It's like, no, this is in total innocence. I have no other goals to achieve. It is in complete, acceptance of this moment, recognizing it that to be perfect, not missing anything. Now anything can happen. Like, I'm totally receptive for that. And this is where we actually communicate. This is what is already holy ground right here. See, but these are concepts. So the whole thing is about my individual expression, my individual experience of this. Maybe that's the most frustrating things in the people that I meet. They say, remember me of everything but a savior. Well, great. That must be perfect. So the conflict increases. And who's going to burst? You. You are going to be rebirthed. Like, the rebirth is your part. You don't have to wait for anyone to be born again. It is you where it's happening. So that's so great. And when I say you, I mean you. So this is great. Thank you so much. All right, so now we come to the individual expressions, and this is a non-public part in the meeting. So we head over to that, and thank you so much for your attention so far.